choirs of angels sing in exultation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, all glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him, Christ the Lord. Adeste fideles, leti triumphantes, venite, venite in Bethlehem. Natum videte, regem angelorum, venite adoremus, venite adoremus, venite adoremus, Dominum. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. A holy day has dawned upon us. Come, you nations, and adore the Lord. For today a great light has come upon the earth. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony, to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave power to become the children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not by natural generation, nor by human choice, nor by a man's decision, but of God. And the Word became flesh, and made his dwelling among us, and we saw his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, saying, "This is he of whom I said, The one who is coming after me ranks ahead of me because he existed before me. From his fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace, because while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The only Son, God, who was at his Father's side, has revealed him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Merry Christmas. What an awesome day that we have, and to celebrate the Lord Jesus coming to us, the God, our God would dare to become flesh with us. And that is such an awesome gift. You know, last night we read about the genealogy of Jesus. And we discover it's not the greatest genealogy in the world by any stretch of the means. Prostitutes, Bathsheba, her name isn't even mentioned. The wife of Uriah she's referred to. Her name isn't even mentioned. And then you got Solomon, then Rehoboam, Solomon's son, who just goes off in different directions. Ahab, the kings that are just really bad kings, leading the people astray and leading them away from God. It is that lineage that is the lineage of Jesus. And then this morning, they had the Mass at the dawn, and we see these angels come to shepherds. And these shepherds are like hired hand shepherds. And these shepherds, actually, it's kind of funny. I was told that shepherds were kind of shady characters. They're kind of like construction workers. Construction workers are kind of shady characters. I was a construction worker. I was known to be a shady character, you know? So lots of cussing and swearing. And the shepherds of that day, you know, they didn't go to the synagogue because they had to be attentive to the sheep. They didn't go to the temple because they had to be attentive to the sheep. They were not educated in God's word or in God's ways in any way. They were called, there was actually a slang for the shepherds. It kind of meant vagabond. So I guess I'm a vagabond, you know? And this is good news for all us vagabonds, all us sinners out there. It's good news that Jesus would be with us. And it's good to know that God would associate through his DNA. You think it is the DNA. Through that DNA would associate with us. Yes, there is hope. There is hope for each and every one of us because God chose to become a human being. It's kind of funny. There's one guy, he was kind of laughing at himself, and he came up with this awesome idea. This awesome idea. He's just like wondering, he was kind of questioning who God was and everything else in his life, and it's like, wow, it's like, you know what would be really awesome? Wouldn't it be awesome if God actually came to us, if like somebody in Freeport, we could point to somebody in Freeport and say, that's God, and he like walked with us, and he actually worked to make a living? What if God actually did that? And what if God were actually to go to like FHN and start healing people? You know, like people who couldn't walk all of a sudden got up and started walking. People like were deaf who couldn't hear very well, and all of a sudden they started hearing. I know there's a lot of people who probably wish that would happen to themselves with all these hearing aids and stuff like that, right? So wouldn't that be awesome? I think it would be awesome. It would be awesome if God actually would do that for us. And the great news is that's exactly what we're celebrating today. That God would actually be with us. That God would actually be born, that Mary would actually have to change his diapers, that he would actually have to learn the language, go to school, be obedient to his parents and all his elders, that God would be willing to do that. It actually happened. What's so awesome about it, I actually got to be there. The place where he was born. It's so awesome to think about that. Now get this. I was at the place where he was born in Bethlehem. And the nativity scene there, where he was born, it's a bit different. So we got like a barn here as a replication, because that's what we see. That's what we know to be a barn. But in the Holy Land, they don't have a lot of wood. It's pretty much scraggly bushes, scraggly trees. Nothing's really straight. I don't think they have a straight branch for 20 feet at all. I don't think there's a single straight branch for 20 feet in the Holy Land. And especially where they're at, kind of like up in the high mountains. It's pretty scraggly. So the only place they got really to be, even for homes, it's in a cave. Everything's in a cave. It's sandstone. You can carve into sandstone. Sandstone's soft enough. So there's a lot of caves in the area. And so there they are. They're going to all the places. They say, sorry, you got to stay in the barn. Well, the barn is, actually, it's the barn with the living area. It's kind of like one open space. And even in that space where Jesus was born, it kind of goes downhill. It slopes downhill in there. And it's somewhat purposeful. And when they bring in the animals, because they got to bring in the animals at night to protect the animals, otherwise the wolves and all these will go after them. So they got to bring them inside, but they put them at the bottom of the hill inside the cave. Because imagine this, animals can't control their bowels. You can't potty train cows and sheep, right? So they're going in a bathroom in the cave. Well, where do they put them? They put them at the bottom of the cave. That's where the barn is. So they put them at the bottom of the cave, and the people are up on top of the cave. That would be pretty nasty if you put the animals up on top and then they let go of their bowels and it goes right downhill right where you're at, right? So that's what it is. That's where Jesus was born, at the bottom of the cave, where they put some hay, where the animals would eat. You think about that. That's where Jesus was born, with the animals. That's what they mean by, my gosh, he was born with the animals and not in human living space. It kind of puts a new perspective on that. How humble God is, he's willing to come to us. He's willing to come to each and every one of us. And he came as that little baby that you hold. But then he decided to come and to live in each and every one of your souls. In each and every one of your very bodies, God chose to live within you. And this is a reality of our faith. Just like Jesus was born in that little barn, in that cave, and I am telling you, sure, he lives within you. He chose to live under your roof. How awesome that is, that God would be willing to do that, to be with you, to love you. This same God who was in the beginning, who is the Word, and that Word is indeed God. And God has so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. He sent his Son to die on the cross as that reality of our faith. How awesome it is for me to have been there, to be on Mount Calvary where he died. And then to be at the place where he rose from the dead. To be able to celebrate Mass on the very slab where Jesus laid dead. That's the reality of our faith. And that's why it's such a good news that our faith is real. So many professors in the colleges will say, bah humbug. Don't believe this. And they tell you either flat out lies or partial truths to get us to no longer believe and to give up our faith. But our faith is based on reality, on a historical fact that Jesus was born. God was given birth of a woman, of a virgin named Mary. And so we get to rejoice that God would be with us in the filth and the muck of our life as he carried that cross up Mount Calvary in the mud and muck. He would be with us in the mud and muck of our life. He would be willing to deal with all this chaos going on in our lives, our families and friends, work, politics, all these things. He's willing to be with us, to be that peace. When is the most peaceful time in your life? I find it is when I'm with God. Just him being with me. I hope that's when you find peace. When you can discover God with us. To enter into that true peace. Doesn't matter all this junk in the world that's going on, that we can be with God and to rejoice that he has truly chosen to be with us, to give us that peace, that we may rejoice in that strength and that peace that he wishes to give us each and every day as we receive him in this physical manifestation on the altar. To discover him in the Eucharist, that his flesh would be made manifest, just like it was made manifest to us on that night of his birth. And then in this manifestation today, to receive him in the Eucharist, that he may enter into us bodily. That we can discover his peace, not just one day out of the year, but every Sunday. And every day of the week, we choose to go to Mass. That he would be our peace. That he would be our source of strength, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, peace, and joy. And so, yes, we get to rejoice this day. This day, our Savior is born.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, unser Schaft, einsam Wort, nur das Freude hat heilige Barr. Wilde Knabe im lockigem Haar, schlaf in himmlischer Ruh, schlaf in himmlischer Ruh. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, hüten Herz, gut gemacht, durch der Engel, Halleluja, tönt es laut von fern und nah. Christ der Retter ist da. Christ der Retter ist da. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, Gottes Sohn, oh wie soul.